Tony Fauci has declared them merely a political statement.
It's easy to get, it's free, and it's readily available. So, you've got to ask, what is the problem? Get over it. Get over this political statement. Just get over it.
Get over it. You don't have a right to disagree. You must take this medicine. This is a well-trod road that we're on, and it's a scary one. We've seen this before, more than a century ago. In the early 1900s, officials in Boston, of course, decided to make an example of a Swedish-born pastor called Henning Jacobson. Jacobson refused to take the government-mandated smallpox vaccine. And in his case, he had good reason for refusing. He'd already taken that vaccine, the same vaccine, in Sweden as a child, and he nearly died from it. Jacobson fought the mandate. He took his case all the way to the Supreme Court, and in the end, the Supreme Court ruled against him. That was a brand new precedent, then as now. And it didn't take long for the government to use that new authority granted by the court to force other medical procedures on the American population. After the Jacobson decision, the state of Virginia passed a law authorizing the involuntary sterilization of people that the state deemed to be, quote, feeble-minded or mentally ill, undesirable. In a landmark decision, Supreme Court Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes, whom we revere most of the time, ruled that the same legal framework that justified mandatory vaccination also permitted the government to sterilize people against their will. He was explicit about the connection. Here's the quote. The principle that sustains compulsory vaccination is broad enough to cover cutting the fallopian tubes, Holmes wrote. By 1930, dozens of American states were forcing women to undergo involuntary sterilization. And in the end, more than 60,000 American women were sterilized by the government against their will. That happened famously, and we shouldn't be surprised by it. Things like that tend to happen when a distracted, submissive population allows the government to dictate what medical procedures they get, what drugs they take. This is a well-known and horrifying chapter in American history, so you'd think the news media might point this out, but just the opposite. Here's a clip from yesterday in which the saddest of the CNN anchors begs this administration to make vaccines mandatory.
What about Kathleen Sebelius, former secretary at HHS? Because she talks about the idea that maybe the administration shouldn't completely abandon the idea of if not vaccine mandates, at least encouraging some businesses or public places to require them. She says, quote, I'm trying to restrain myself, but I've kind of had it. We're going to tiptoe around mandates. It's like, come on, I'm kind of over that. I want to make sure that people I deal with don't have it so I don't transmit it to my granddaughter. So why not encourage, if not governments to mandate it, then some businesses, at least to require it?
The media demanding forced vaccinations. That shouldn't surprise you. They're not in the business to inform the public. They're in the business for power. They couldn't get jobs in finance, but this gives them a little swat. That's literally why they have the jobs they do. And they love their new power. What's interesting is that no other organized groups of sensible people who aren't emotionally damaged like your average cable news anchor, none of them are saying anything either. Why not? Veterans groups, for example, have remained silent as the Pentagon floats the idea of mandatory vaccinations for all soldiers. Now, there's zero scientific evidence that this could be necessary for any health-related reason whatsoever, but they're pushing forward. At a briefing on Tuesday, the Pentagon's top spokesman said that mandatory vaccinations for soldiers could be coming very soon.
Should the FDA approve it, then I am certain that Pentagon leadership will take a look at what our options are going forward, including the potential option of making mandatory.
Oh, making it mandatory. Have you seen this movie before? Yes. Those of us who are older than 22 remember it well. The Pentagon has forced soldiers to take untested experimental vaccines before. It happened in Iraq. Troops there had to take the anthrax vaccine. What happened? Many of those soldiers are now eligible for disability benefits through the VA. Look it up. Why? Because that vaccine caused serious long-term complications. Those included infertility, lupus, paralysis, blindness, neurological damage.